he's really good at swim analysis, and more than anything, taking that analysis and saying, all right, here's the one drill I want you to work on for the next 2 months.
Yeah,
Forget about everything else that I said, but one drill.
Yeah. When a coach gives you like 4 drills to work on, I just like,
oh yeah, I do.
Might as well not even be talking.
Yeah. Okay, we are live streaming now on YouTube. We'll get started here in just a moment.
Cool.
Just press play here. Is that your volume on your phone, Matt?
Sorry.
No, it's right.
Turning it off. I wanted to see the live chat in case. We don't usually have a lot of people
the live streaming
join the live stream.
Yeah, it's still something new. And as soon as we get it fine-tuned, I'm sure have more people listening. Okay, we are recording now and ready to start. Okay, here we go. Hi, and welcome to the Dial Podcast. I am Jake Von Duringen. Today I'm here with Evan Price.
Boys, what is everybody drinking today?
Okay, so if people are watching the live stream or watch the live stream later, it looks like I have this massive bomber of beer.
Matt is definitely not drinking anymore.
I promise I'm not drinking this big beer. I'm drinking sparkling water, which is right next to it. I'll do one of those cracks.
Kirkland.
Kirkland.
Excellent. Good. And the man you were just listening to, Mr. Matt LeGrand.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. Well, good.
We're doing good. We're doing good.
And that would be Lance Hepler on location. Lance
Romance on location. Yes, you are stuck with another subpar recording of my beautiful and soothing voice. So,
but this time, no face to the voice.
Yeah.
No face.
No face. No video today. I didn't do my makeup, so I couldn't, have the video up. I'm actually driving back from Utah right now. I know I was in Hawaii last week, but I'm I'm driving back from Utah. I'm in between a little town of Burns, Oregon and Bend, Oregon. So I don't know how good my signal's going to be, but I'm going to try to hang on here as long as I can.
Gotcha. And we've got one more person, but I'm going to let Matt LeGrand introduce this gentleman.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so a lot of you guys are probably familiar with him. If you guys have listened to this podcast, we've probably talked about Triathlon Terran before. Triathlon Terran is he's kind of one of those people that I think about as someone that's a real influencer in our sport. And in my opinion, he's probably brought more people to the sport of triathlon more than anyone that I can think of or anyone that comes to mind. I'm super pumped. Triathlon Terran of triathlonterran.com, as well as YouTube fame, Triathlon Terran, youtube.com/Triathlon Terran. I think that's right. Is that correct, Terran?
Just Terran is good.
Oh, is
if
it?
you want to be super casual while I drink some sparkling water.
Also,
Kirkland water as well.
Terran,
Okay.
what is your last name, by the way?
Gazelle, like the animal, which is really ironic because I'm not that fast, but it's a good thing to throw out there.
It's very intimidating on a start line, though, to line up next to a gazelle, I'd imagine.
Yeah, until they see me move, and then they're like, all right, I'm not worried.
All right. So what we do at this point in time, Terran, is we do a back pedal, and we're going to run through our last week. Let's go ahead and start with Matt. And
Sure. Yeah.
Matt,
I had a pretty mellow week of training. I'm swimming super well right now, which is crazy. I think I may have PR'd in the 50.
Did you?
50, so that's meters, a meters pool, just in practice. Like
From
we
the
do
blocks?
Like
Did you guys go from the blocks?
Blocks.
Yeah.
30. I didn't break 30, but it was like 30 point or whatever. And I'm like,
God, you'd be toasting me right now.
Well, I would love
Yeah.
to. There's some things I'd like to do. But yeah, so swimming's going great. I ran a race yesterday with my wife. I paced her, and she was second overall, which is super cool.
What race was that? Was that
It's called
Shamrock?
yeah, it was like the Couve Clover race.
Couve
or
Clover,
whatever.
yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
And she ran basically like 7:15 pace for 10 miles.
Wow.
I know, it's good. And I'm glad that I was able to hang on because that was the fear. She's doing great.
That would have been a so much better story if she just would have like dropped you in the last 5K.
She was hurting. I think we went out a little bit too hard. We went out a little bit too hard, and she was hurting a little bit. But still, second overall was cool. It was good that she did that, and we had a lot of fun too. We just saw a lot of people, and then we had to we actually had a babysitter. So this was like a total running date. Like we had our 3 kids at home with a babysitter, just the 2 of us out there running a race. It was super fun, and then we had to hustle right from there to go to like kids soccer. So it was great.
Nice. All right, Lance, backpedal for us, bud.
Oh, well, I'm going to have a whole bunch of jealousy from the group, especially if we've got all these triathletes on the line and listening today, because I spent last week on the Big Island of Hawaii and got to ride a bunch of really cool spots. So it was pretty phenomenal. One of the
Everybody needs to go onto your Facebook, Lance, because I'll tell you, I've been living so vicariously through you the last 6 days. So vicariously through you.
There's some decent photos on there of some of the cool stuff I've been able to do this last week. It's been pretty cool, that's for sure.
Gotcha. You are in the middle of nowhere right now, aren't you? You're breaking up a little bit there.
One of the coolest rides I did was on the Big
Okay,
Hawaii.
Lance, we're not really getting a good connection with you, buddy. Are you in a bad spot?
In and out.
Yeah.
Right,
it's either that or he's just talking real slow.
Maybe you should, this is when you have a pod. I gotta get to the top of this hill.
Lance, call us back when you get some service. So, Taryn, backpedal for us. How was your last week, man?
Last week was fantastic because I barely did anything. After half Ironman Puerto Rico, my longest workout was about 50 minutes, and it was the best week ever.
That sounds awesome.
If they could all be recovery weeks, I would really be into training for triathlon.
Oh yeah. How much good food did you eat? Like what's your post race went well 2 days after? What meal are you having, Taryn?
Well, being in Puerto Rico, somebody said you got to have mofongo. And mofongo is deep fried smashed plantains. And
that sounds so good.
Binged on mofongo. It was 3 days in a row that I had stuffed mofongo and chicken fried mofongo.
Oh my gosh.
It was like that scene in Forrest Gump where the guy is rattling off all the different ways of shrimp. And I was like, well, there are so many different ways to make mofongo, Kim.
So, Taryn, do you want to talk about the race at all?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, but let's just go for it.
We were talking before the podcast. We were like, wow, he had a great race. We were super excited for you.
Not that I was not expecting you to have a good race, Taryn, but I looked at those times very impressed. Very, very impressed from that race.
Thanks. The swim went well. The bike went well. The run, I don't know if they call that a run course in Puerto Rico, but it's not a running race course. We ran on it, but there are so many hills, and I think it was 28 degrees Celsius, so somewhere around 86 Fahrenheit.
Oh God.
And there was 633 meters of elevation change.
Oh my gosh.
And there were two hills that in the, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 times that I went either up or down the hills, I saw one person other than me running it. They were so intense.
Yeah.
So the run did not, I don't know. I think I'm still battling these demons of, was it a good run or wasn't it a good run? Because it was slower than a time that I wanted.
Right.
But I think given the conditions, it might have been relatively a decent run.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's you kind of have to throw out the times, you throw them out the window when you have a course like that and it's that hot. The other side of it is you're from Winnipeg, right? Is
it warm up there?
It's not. It's not 80 something degrees. It's not. I mean, this is unbelievable that you were able to probably. I don't know how many times you biked outside in Winnipeg, but I'm guessing it was a handful or less. And you do that, and then you go have. It's just
it was less than one. Less than one.
It's how do you do that? You do. You had all this, and then you had a great bike split. Your bike split was one of the top splits of the entire race.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I went to the head mechanic from Ventum the day before and asked him to tune up my bike, and he might have put a motor inside of it.
There you go. Good. Yeah.
I don't know, because I hopped on the bike and I was like, we'll try to hold some comfortable watts, and it just ended up being a really. It was like a biker's bike course where if you knew how to, as Cam Wurf calls it, work the road, you could really carry a lot of speed. But if you didn't know how to work the road, and you don't have a lot of comfort in wind, you get knocked around a little bit. But I was just like, oh man, this is great. Good road surface, like long open stretches with slight curves. So it just breaks it up mentally. I really like that bike course.
So are you doing a lot of your training on indoor? I mean, obviously you're doing a lot of your training indoors. So is it Zwift and things like that?
Yeah, pretty much exclusively Zwift. Over the winter, I did do a fair bit of fat biking actually when I was in like the base building part of the season. So I was outside at least once a week for the 2 to 3 hour ride just to build a base of fitness. But then once things started getting serious and trying to get like specific race intervals for longer stretches, it was just all Zwift.
Yeah, I was watching one of your videos, and I did catch, this is Jake, by the way. I'm not the triathlete of the group, so I'm probably just going to be doing a lot of listening today, but I did see you on the fat bike, and I'm like, you know what? That is awesome. And for the sheer fact that it's getting a triathlete on a different bike, you know, kind of changing things up a little bit, but the bike handling that comes from that is fantastic. So it's awesome to see you trying different things or implementing different things based on where you live to help you with your race preparation. Good stuff.
And Taryn,
absolutely. Oh, go ahead.
So being up from how many months out of the year are you able to spend on a fat bike? Because I'm from Ohio originally, so much colder out there, and we would have a lot of my cycling friends who would buy fat bikes. And they get a good 4 or 5 months use out of them, and I know in the Pacific Northwest you'd maybe get 3 days use out of them. So
yeah, that'd be about right. Like I was just on the fat bike a couple hours ago, so here we are end of March, and basically as soon as the snow crisps up and stops being really sloppy, so around here that's end of November, beginning of December, so we get a good 4 months of it.
Oh, that's cool.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
All right. Let's. Did you want to talk more about the race stuff, Matt? Or
we'll delve.
We can delve into that a little bit more.
Back into that. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, we're still kind of in our back pedal here. I don't really care too much about me. I did like a fun team ride, which was fantastic.
Yeah. How was that?
It was incredible. I mean,
how far did you guys go?
It was almost 80 miles, and it was just a big slugfest with a bunch of super strong guys. So
where'd you guys end up stopping?
We went all the way out to Multnomah Falls.
Okay, that's
and back, and it was just it was a great day for a ride.
Did you have coffee out there in Multnomah Falls?
Coffee and fudge.
No.
So we started at a donut shop, awesome. Which was awesome because everybody kind of like, being cyclists, everybody's like, oh, you want to split a donut with me? I have guys like 3 guys splitting one donut because they don't want the calories. But we got out to Multnomah Falls and had a little piece of fudge and some coffee or espresso and whatnot. But Sean Martin, right before we got there, double flatted. We were coming in, and there's a lot of traffic always there, and we were following a car in, and he didn't see these like bits of rock on the road. It was like shrapnel rock, like really sharp. He double flatted right as we got there. So the poor guy, the whole time that we're there enjoying our coffee and whatnot, he's changing flat tires. So I went up and I bought him a coffee, and I bought him a cookie about the size of his head. So that was pretty fun to watch.
I always wonder if it's like the coffee that they have there, or if it's like you're 40 miles into a bike ride and I'm like, this is the best coffee of my life.
Their coffee is good.
Is it?
It is really good.
Is it, or is it that you're 40 miles into the bike ride?
Both.
Have you ever been there when you haven't been 40 miles into a bike ride?
I have not.
No, I have not. To be completely honest with you. Yep. So yeah, it was a great week of riding and a lot of other stuff that we don't need to hear about. I'm kind of curious to talk about the insane person sitting to my right by the name of Evan Price.
Oh no!
I didn't have a chance.
Taryn's week sounds so much more fun than mine, though. I really think that we should.
I didn't have a chance to really catch up on Strava until last night, and I'm scrolling through and going, oh my God, he did this, and he followed up with that, and then I get to the next, and I'm like, holy crap, he did this 2 days in a row. Evan, enlighten us. How was your week, buddy?
It was. As I was telling Matt on my walk into here, I'm pretty tired right now. More physically, I actually feel fine, to be completely honest. I'm probably more mentally tired right now, I would say. The last 2 weeks, my goal was in 15 days, I wanted to get 2 separate 7-day blocks that were going to average close to 30 hours. So it was going to be like a 28-hour week the first week, and then 32 this week.
Oh man!
With 1 day in between, that was like nothing. Like literally, I spun on the bike for 30 minutes last Monday.
And just for those other people that don't realize, like, you do work also as a physical therapist.
Yeah.
And that's more than that's what 40-50 hours a week.
50 usually.
50-ish?
Yeah.
I don't know how you fit that in. Like, there's just not that many hours in the day.
I've gotten really efficient in my evenings during the week, I would say. Yeah. But, you know, it was and Saturday and Sunday have just become like big training days then. So the last 2 days I went on, I was going to do the Multnomah ride with you guys, but my timing wise through the day, I like had to be done at a certain time. So I was lucky enough that Dustin's back in town now. We have a friend, Taryn, who is a track cyclist and a very good one. So Taryn, you being a triathlete also know that the scariest person for a triathlete to ride with on the bicycle would be a track cyclist. So I like to train with Dustin quite a bit, actually. But he's back in town from Hawaii and was ready to, you know, hammer and wanted to ride hard. So I did about 70 miles with Alan, David, and Dustin, and we hammered on and off the whole time. Luckily, I was able to take Dustin out to some hills so I could be the one leading and not having to chase him on the flats all day.
Yeah.
But I felt really that was the first day. I know we had talked about I wanted to gain some confidence back on the bike. That was the first day I felt like I'm back to better fitness than I've been in before. And then jumped off and ran a long way.
How far did you go?
It was like 15 miles almost.
Really?
Yeah.
How'd that feel?
Great.
Did you drop the pace down at all?
I was holding 7s and then decided I was like, that's too quick. I just need to slow down because there was no reason for me to hold that. Swam after that. Tried not to move much that evening. Woke up, did a trainer century again.
Another.
I know.
My gosh.
I know. I did another one of them. That was
Trainer centuries are like
it was terrible.
Mentally exhausting.
Yeah. That was like physically felt fine. Mentally, that was awful. I really did not need to do that again. But jumped off, ran roughly a half marathon. I think it was a little bit less.
Did you do that one faster or kind of same pace?
That was just legs were dead. Just whatever pace I could hold. And it was warm too, which was good. Because I actually wanted to go outside when it was a little bit warm.
I was thinking about you doing that 10-miler. I was like, Evan would be finished with his half marathon because I went 1:13 for the 10-miler, and I was like, that's you could do a half marathon that same time. I was like, that's good. So.
But yeah, that was basically the weekend.
You're insane.
And now I'm here.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're not over there curled up in a ball sleeping.
This is also why, yes, I'm much more interested in Taryn's week than I am my week. So.
And you're not even crying, Evan. I don't even see.
On the inside. There was some crying Sunday on the inside. Yeah.
All right, let's jump into our topics for today. Matt, again, I'm going to let you guide the show today, so it's kind of a Matisode almost.
Yeah,
have at it.
Well, definitely. The two things that I wanted to talk about were, post-race recovery, mostly because it's great to have Taryn's input on that. And all of us are going to be facing some of our first races of the season and things like that. And I think the post-race recovery is a super interesting topic. And then the other topic that I feel like we definitely beat the, dead horse on this one, which is like, how do we get more people into our sport? And so we can tackle those in whichever order you guys are interested in doing, but I almost think that maybe we should start with kind of post-race recovery, just because we were just kind of talking about our weeks. And Taryn, you mentioned that you had done no workout over 50 minutes. How else are you recovering from that half Ironman race?
You know what? I use the time after races or big events as just as much a mental break as a physical break. So I don't tend to put a lot of stress on. I've got to use recovery boots or cold showers or things like that, or specific foods. I sort of just do what my body feels like doing. And if some days that's go for a run, which last week ended up being a mistake. I felt like going for a run, so I went for a run. Legs weren't quite run ready. I just sort of go by what my body feels like doing, making sure that at no point do I really exert myself or feel tired at the end of a workout. And I eat a lot and don't really stress out about what time or when I work out. Just kind of go with the flow. So in my case, because training is also a little bit of work, it's like a little bit of a mental vacation for me as well, to make sure that just mentally I can take that time off after a race.
Nice.
Yeah, Taryn, I think you make a great point that I think sometimes we way overestimate the physical needs of recovery. Our bodies as endurance athletes are fine with the recovery cycle. They're really good at the recovery cycle. The mental part, I agree with you, Taryn. I don't think that we're all as good at the mental part of it. Realizing that the grind of waking up at the same time every day and doing the same thing, you need a break from that every once in a while. especially when you're in Puerto Rico, for gosh sake. Yeah. If you can enjoy time in Puerto Rico, then like, why are we even doing the sport, you know?
Yeah. You know what? Like I look at our sport, and there's a lot of people that are in it really intensely for say 5 to 10 years and then never come back. And I think that that's kind of the nature of our sport attracts really A-type people, and B, once those A-type people get into the sport, they obsess about it. And that's just not mentally or physically sustainable. So I think everything kind of goes by ebbs and flows of maybe one year you do an Ironman, maybe the next year you do like a swim run or a distance swim, or instead of putting your self-worth on having to be a Ironman triathlete or a triathlete that's constantly chasing PRs. I think if you take a step back and just live an endurance lifestyle and say, all right, what do I have to do to live an endurance lifestyle to do that for the rest of your life? Part of that is mental breaks. And I think that burnout is something that is really bad in our sport, that people just need to calm the F down and take a step back.
Absolutely. That's I couldn't. And I think, you know, also this being a cycling podcast too, Taryn, we're lucky enough to, me and Matt get to be around cyclists all the time. And I agree with you that it has more to do with just like the people who are in their 40s and have been around endurance sports for 20, 30 years. There's this more like relaxed air about them. And that's just because they've spent years bike racing, or they've spent years like, I'm going to do a half marathon focus this year, or I'm going to do trail races. Or like we talked about in this podcast, we're going to throw on some paddles on our hand and running shoes and swim between islands and run across them or something.
Yeah, the swim run stuff looks super cool.
That's kind of up in, is that popular up in Canada, Taryn?
On the Vancouver side, probably.
Vancouver side. Okay. What's that style of racing called?
Yeah, I think we might have one around, I think there's one in like Muskoka area, but I'm not sure. There are a couple buddies that are just literally starting to be like the first guys locally that are training for it. But I think it's going to grow crazy fast because it looks like a ton of fun.
Oh, it looks like
because it's so ridiculous.
Oh yeah, you're swimming with shoes on, which is great.
Yeah, we talk about on this podcast all the time about like how fast like gravel cycling is kind of growing as a sport,
especially in
this region.
I
wonder if there's something similar, you know, in triathlon side of things where maybe it's one of those like swim run events, or maybe it's some like off-road triathlon. I don't know, but that, you know, definitely could be a mental break, you know, if you're training for something that's a little different than, you know, the standard Ironman, right? Where it's like, you know, you're going to go hit the roads and do all this stuff.
I think this blends into our how do we get more people into the sport?
You think? Yeah.
We make it less pure PR based. I mean, I get weekly, every single week, I have either it's a patient or a friend of mine asking me questions on like, you know, how do I get better on the bike? How do I get better on the run? How do I get better in the swim? And the questions are never like, you know, like I'm really tired of like being, you know, PR based right now. Like what else is there out there? People are just obsessed with like, I want to get my 40K faster. I want to get my half marathon PR faster. So yeah, I think it's just taking away that PR pressure is probably how we get more people into the sport.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's such a tough question for sure. I like the idea of being like, oh, I can go maybe because I can't set any personal records on the running side. So it's like, but I mean, like I could theoretically snag a, you know, if we do like a 40K time trial on the bike, like there's a chance I could PR in that. And then, you know, there's a chance I could PR in a lot of the triathlon stuffs or potentially a lot of the swimming stuff, right? Because I've, Taryn, have you ever done like just a swim meet, like straight up swim meet?
Yeah, and I got disqualified from it. It was great.
Tell that story.
Perfect triathlete.
That's awesome.
You got to tell that story. Let's hear that.
Well, I just wanted to get in a swim workout that day, and the pool was closed because there was a meet. So I walk up and I was like, I'll actually turn this into a workout. So I picked a bunch of events that were kind of close together, but amounted to about 2,500 meters of hard swimming. And I used my floaty pants for them. And like purposefully, because that was what I wanted to do in the workout. So I did a 1,500 meter event, and the guy came up after I air quotes won it. And he's like, "Hey man, I'm sorry. We're going to have to disqualify you because of those neoprene shorts." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know. I just wanted to do a workout." Like, no,
awesome.
like, I'm sorry. I hate to say this. Like, No, like I knew I was getting disqualified. It's okay.
That's awesome.
At that point, you should have just jumped in with like the full sleeve wetsuit and acted like you had no idea why you got disqualified.
Yeah, this is crap.
Yeah, this is ridiculous.
That'd be hilarious.
That's too funny.
Let's get back to the post-race recovery.
Yeah.
Do you have like a specific go-to for your races and your training sessions and all the different ways that you're out there doing your different stuff? You guys do way too many things. I just like riding my bike and thinking about, all right, I'm just going to go get something to eat. But what is it that you do? I mean, do you have a routine? Do you have a go-to?
Mine?
Yeah. Sorry, Taryn.
Yeah.
Yep. I tend to manage the recovery as from a standpoint of not building up a ton of fatigue throughout training. So instead of having to recovery and fatigue management at the forefront of something by saying, all right, well, if my fatigue levels get massively high, here's how I have to deal with that. I sort of have like a low hum of fatigue throughout. And that allows me to just pop in a day of, say, like an easy ride on a Monday or an easier swim on a Friday. And that's really enough to manage some fatigue and recovery. I don't have to do these massive like 2-week tapers or really be conscious of fatigue levels because I don't really build up a ton as I go. And then that allows me to recover a little bit easier after the race because it doesn't take a lot out of me. I've kind of just got a nice baseline of fitness that I can come in and out of races fairly easily. So yeah, I sort of manage recovery from the standpoint of like overall management as opposed to a acute variable that I try to manage.
That's a really good point, Taryn. I think we're all looking for that like silver bullet with that. Everybody's like, oh, well, if I wear these Normatec legs twice a week, will that make me faster in the short term here? Yeah, recover at a faster rate. I think that you're taking a good approach there by not you're not going outside of your system's demands just randomly 3 weeks out of the year and then hoping that you can recover in time for a big race.
Right. And I think that leaves exactly like you say, like going outside of your regular systems, that so many people leave that like 3-week taper, the 2-week taper up to chance, because there's a lot that can go wrong when you have your cortisol levels dip for that long. And that's just what happens in a taper, that you're not giving your body that stress anymore and your cortisol levels dip. And if you're doing that for 3 weeks, there's a hell of a lot that can go wrong. I could probably get away with a 3-day taper, a 2-day taper for a half Ironman and be perfectly fine. What I'm giving up is a little bit of like that peak top 2% in the field kind of fitness. But I think it allows me to potentially get to that top 2% in the field. It might just take me longer. It might take me a few years instead of peaking for like 1 year that I blew my brains out.
Yeah. And that also allows you to want to do triathlon and endurance sports for longer periods of time instead of like, I mean, I even know, younger friends of mine who I really do think had pro potential at young ages who just, they went for it for a year or two and just absolutely hated the sport by the end of that cycle. They threw themselves into training that I don't think they were ready for. And then 12 months later, all of a sudden they don't even want to get up in the morning and swim and they just quit the sport. So I think that looking at, instead of just post-race recovery, looking at like, season recovery. Recovery as a whole in a year is an awesome way to look at it.
How do you recover, Evan? You did like World Championship halves, like that was your end of your season.
How did I recover after that?
What do you do? Like, do you just
contemplated quitting the sport is what I did after that. No, that week after my I always have like one race of the year that I consider my last race of the year. I don't know what that'll be this year, but I always have one. And that week after, I always go somewhere to hike, and I don't even do anything triathlon based. That's cool. I kind of like Taryn, I eat whatever I want to eat.
Right.
Just like just absurd amounts of food. Yeah. But that's more like we talked about, that mental side of that recovery. Because physically, I mean, like, what does that do? Like 7 days off from the sport, I don't feel like is required for, physically for recovery. Probably 48 hours after taking it easy is fine. But, after that, you're basically physically recovered. Hormonally, you may not be recovered by that point. But yeah.
I think getting in the water too. I feel like that's kind of. Yeah. I feel better if I swim a little bit. Usually, a week after an Ironman, I'll be in the water that week a good bit, and then Jake and I, we probably talked about this, where it's just like go find a new road that you want to. That might be a good road. Like just go find stuff. Like no, like whatsoever. Yeah. Like nothing mentally.
Definitely
prepared.
Don't go on your old loops. Like don't jump on your road bike and go to your like interval loop.
Kind of sounds like Taryn. This is kind of what you're doing too. Where it's like mentally, just like yeah, maybe I feel like a run. You go do it, and like I would tell, like when I coach like high school kids and things like that, and I'll tell them like if they're doing, their recovery week or whatever it is, like this is your chance to find a new trail. Like go explore and like stop, throw rocks in the water, like all that stuff that you guys are doing when you're not supposed to do that. That's it's different, but like this is the chance to do all that fun stuff. Or Jake and I will do like, what's this road? We don't know. Okay, we're gonna go ride that road.
Check it out. Let's go dink around a little bit. And I love taking pictures of stuff too. And I like taking a little bit of food with me sometimes and just kind of like stopping and enjoying something and just hanging out and remembering why you fell in love with what you're doing.
Yeah. So. Yeah, recovery weeks are perfect for that stuff, for sure.
Yeah. How long did you stay in Puerto Rico for, Taryn, after your race?
I only stayed until Tuesday morning. So race was Sunday, and then we left Tuesday morning. And this was actually an interesting little test that we did. We flew in right close to the race, just late Thursday night. And I normally have got into races a fair ways away, like 5 to 7 days. And I actually really liked this quick turnaround of get there, race, come back fairly quick. Because I find like those bookends before and after a race, it's just like throwing you out of your groove. So there's so much time that you can build up, like putting on water weight from eating crappy food or sitting in a hotel room that isn't your normal home, and that little bit of cortisol response ends up creating bad sleep habits, and you just slowly deteriorate. But I learned this from Matt Hansen, pro triathlete, that he comes in like right close to a race, and then I started picking up that more and more pros do that, and I liked it a lot. So we came in really tight to the race, left just a couple days later so that we didn't have to be rushed after the race packing up the bike, and then save actual vacation time for a real vacation.
I'm going to jump off recovery here for a second just because you mentioned his name, Taryn. How do you think Matt's going to race this year? How fast do you think he can get? Because I'm a big Matt fan. I think he's going to be quick.
I like Matt a lot. He's a tough one because a lot of his race depends on where he ends up in the swim. He's not a natural swimmer.
Right.
So if he ends up getting on fast feet, it could be a real fast race, and like he could get into that front, air quotes, non-drafting, legal drafting pack. But if he has a bad swim, that could be his entire race there. Like he's so run dominant that sort of unpredictable to know where he's going to go.
Yeah. I mean, he's basically capped out as much run speed as he can possibly get out of. I mean, he's a guy capable of going under 110.
Oh yeah.
They're not. Like, as a sport, it's not getting much faster than that. There's no way. I mean, Jan went 106. That's as fast as a human being's going to go in a half Ironman.
That was unusual for sure.
20 years from now, somebody will listen to that and be like, oh, well, now they're going 102. But there's no way. Like, you're only going to be so far under 110.
Yeah. It's definitely a cool part of the sport to see, like, these crazy numbers like 106 being thrown out.
God, yeah.
But he's one of those runners that's capable of going that kind of speed for sure. But it's interesting to see. Yeah, we always kind of talk about the swim being the least important part of the race, but because of positioning, it ends up being important for him. I wonder how his swimming is going. So we'll find out. We'll find out soon enough. He's probably racing Texas, right?
I think. Taryn, do you know off the top? I think he's going to be at Galveston. I think 73.
We'll find out.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
I'm not sure. I know he's spending a lot of time in a sauna, so I imagine that he's gearing up for something that is going to be fairly hot coming up soon.
That's got to be it then. Yeah. You know who has not been spending any time in a sauna? Me. So I'm going to be in trouble.
Taryn, what else do you have on your calendar for 2019?
Well, right now today is the first day of a fun little project. I'm doing my first full distance race, being Challenge Roth, in the beginning of July. And the fun part about this is that I enlisted the consultation of Dan Plews, who won the amateur division of Kona last year.
Yeah.
And super interesting guy, broke the course record. And he jokes that he has been published in, I think, 24 papers, cited in hundreds of studies. He's coached 3 pro triathletes to sub 8-hour Ironmans.
Yeah.
And all people want to talk about is Kona. So the interesting thing about him is that he really supports a low carb, high fat approach. And just for kind of interest's sake, because I've done my blood testing and I know that my resting blood or my fasting blood glucose levels are quite high. I'm sort of on the borderline of pre-diabetic, which indicates that I cannot process a lot of fat. So we're going to go through 3 months of a Dan Plews protocol, and we're going to do a bunch of testing and see if we can increase my fat oxidation and see how my first full Ironman race goes, if the body holds up, and if I can look good in a Speedo.
Yeah,
burning off all that fat. We'll see.
9-10 hours is a long time to look good in a Speedo, so that's going to take some work, a lot of posing.
Oh. A lot of butt clenches.
Yes, a lot of glute squeezes.
Yeah.
Taryn, I think our blood is similar, which is that's not a good thing. But I do think, I'm wondering if you'll actually feel better also, if your blood glucose levels are a little bit lower, kind of even after like a little bit of fasting, like morning glucose levels. But, if you can keep an eye on that stuff for the next 3 months, I'm really excited to kind of watch the progress and how you handle it. I know it's going to be stressful just because diet changes like that are tricky. But I'm really intrigued to see how your blood responds and things like that, which will be easy to kind of track, but also just kind of how your mood and how you feel as that process goes through.
Yeah, well, like overall, I'm really intrigued by the science of it, and I should probably put the caveat to anyone listening that this is not keto that we're talking about. Right. Keto is a very dangerous thing for endurance athletes to do. It's a lower carb approach and more fat-based approach, and I would probably argue that it's more of an appropriate level of carbs, which is like quarters, fractions of what the normal dietary guidelines are. But there are so many benefits to it, like not just from a performance standpoint, but as endurance athletes, whether we're cyclists or swimmers, we spend hours and hours with no blood in our stomach. Meanwhile, we're putting this massive inflammatory response with carbs into our stomach at a time that it's not really ready to handle it. So like I do notice certain things like skin irritations or stomach discomfort just from the nature of what we do. And if I can get rid of that from a longevity standpoint, like I'm pumped, even if it makes me 1% faster, like from a longevity standpoint,
right?
That's enough for me to be really intrigued by it.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's like we're always thinking about like, how's this going to make us faster? How's this going to make us faster? What about actually being healthier? Like, what about actually living longer?
Easy there, yeah.
Whoa, that's crazy talk, right? Like, I know personally, like that's one of the things that we've talked a lot about on this podcast is basically intermittent fasting and things like that. And it's not, I mean, yeah, performance is there and things like that, but like, I'm almost more like excited about the actual health benefits of it.
Oh yeah.
Being able to continue doing what we do for longer periods of time and being on this planet, being healthier and happier. That's a big benefit.
Yeah. Taryn, have you experimented with some of the intermittent fasting? Is that kind of something that you've taken on?
Yeah, quite a bit. It's a little bit hard when you start doing like double workouts a day.
Yep.
But I'll pretty much always every day have a 12-hour fast.
Right.
And when you start looking at endurance athletes, 12 hours has actually a similar benefit to 14, 16-hour fasts for the average sedentary person. So 12 hours is around what I do just about every single day. And I think part of what I'm going to get to, and this is a multi-step process, once I get to a point of regularly having blood glucose levels that are lower, I'll then intermittently have like one day that is like called a keto fast. And this is kind of like spins on fasting, where there's a lot of science that's showing that like multiple day water fasts have just as many downsides as they have upsides, but you can get a lot of the upsides without the downsides by, say, a fast mimicking diet over the course of 5 days, or just a once a week, say 18-hour fast, and then a primarily plant-based protein single meal in a day. Now you've got to manage that with all of your training, and you've got to be metabolically prepared for it.
Right.
So it's something that we're starting to look at incorporating. But if it were just as simple as lower your carbs to less than 50 grams a day and everyone should go keto and everyone will be great, everyone would have six-pack abs and look as good as I'm hoping to look in a Speedo, but that's not the case. Like it's tougher and more complicated, and it takes a long time to do this right.
Yeah, and I feel like the studies just aren't. They're like, we're just figuring this stuff out right now. Like I feel like we're kind of turning the corner.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I have a new nutritionist friend of mine who, I may be in the medical field, but I do not claim to be a nutritionist by any means. Right. But I've experimented with a lot of this just on a power size of 1 being myself, maybe 2. I've had a friend who does some of it with me, but I've talked about on this podcast before, when I was much younger, I would do fasted 7 or 8 hour training days. So it would be a 12-hour fast, but it would be 8 hours of training in there. And I've actually kind of started to get away from those a little bit. The reason I've got away, and Taryn, I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate, because I do completely, I'm really intermittent fasting throughout your regular day is great. But I think when you're training for, I'll talk from a cyclist point of view, or a track, like some of your high schoolers, Matt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's when we're talking about neuromuscular benefits of a workout. So let's say today's workout's 10 by 400 and I'm a high school track runner.
Right.
I don't want to go into that fasted.
You can't, right. You have to pick and choose your workouts.
Now if today's a recovery run, that's where what Taryn you're talking about, I think it's wildly beneficial to actually go fasted into those. Yeah. I think it is. I think to some extent, when you're staying well below in that fat metabolism, region still, I think that's where you can get some benefit from going on an easy run. But yeah, if you're doing 10 by 400, if you're not hitting, let's say, God, your kids are hitting 68s.
Oh yeah,
some of them probably faster.
Some of them are faster.
Some of them are going faster. Yeah. But Taryn, he coaches a very fast high school, but so those kids, if they don't have that available, very, very quick available glycogen at that time, they may not be able to get those same numbers. Now, you could argue, are they still getting a benefit? Not neuromuscularly. Neuromuscularly, 68 seconds is 68 seconds. Right. There's no arguing around it. Yeah. That is a certain amount of force output in the muscles and a certain amount of turnover, basically neuro signals to the muscles. Yeah. And if they're not hitting those numbers, I don't think they get the benefits.
It's weird, because it's similar to altitude, right? You think you get all these benefits by being at 7,000 feet of altitude, but it turns out that when you're running on the track and you're running slower, that's a negative every time. And so what they have the concept of sleep, live high and train low or whatever it is, so that you can have those neuromuscular benefits of hitting those. Let's say you're supposed to hit 65s on your quarters, you need to hit those, because your body knows how that feels when you hit those on the track. And then ultimately you're hoping to race at sea level or whatever it is, so you can run, do your fast races or whatever they are. But
because you think about this region, we got some very fast runners.
Yeah.
Portland is 100 feet in the air at its highest, right next to the river. Yeah. I mean, we're talking people who live in inner city Port. I mean, we're talking sea level.
Yep.
That's, some of those people who have a little bit more financial means can go and travel and race it out, train at altitude.
So Taryn, we're right next. I mean, we're very close to the Nike headquarters, and we do have a lot of professional athletes in this particular area. And a lot of those athletes will, their schedule allows them to do certain altitude blocks and things like that. And so it's just, it's different for sure. But even at their altitude blocks, they're looking to come down to find a track as low as they can find one within a reasonable driving distance. Because just like you said, neuromuscular benefits of having those numbers and hitting those things, that speed that you want in your legs is pretty critical.
Yeah.
I imagine cycling is similar. So
yeah, definitely. I know. Well, for cycling, it's interesting because I know Team Sky last year actually documented they did a big training block fasted.
Oh,
they
really?
they were experimenting with some, at least from what they were talking about, it seemed the diet was trying to reflect some form of, I would say, Taryn, it was probably more closer to what you were describing, like a lower carb diet. I don't think that they were messing around with anything keto. But they did an off-season training block at very, very low carb.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That must have been very difficult.
I heard about that from Sebastian Weber. cycling coach in triathlon. He's not super well known, but I suppose in cycling he is. And he was talking about how they found that, I think it was Chris Froome, is a really good candidate for a lower carb approach. And kind of because he's the top dog, they brought that sort of approach to the whole team. And I think that is largely why Team Sky did that.
Yeah. Okay.
Gotcha.
That's interesting. I'll tell you what, I would not want to be trying to hold Chris Froome's wheel while I don't have a lot of carbs in my system. Right. That would be rough.
Now, Taryn, you've got some pretty interesting stuff coming up too. You know, we're talking about cycling and things like that. The Masters classes that you have coming up. For any of the folks that don't actually follow you super closely, you've been talking about these master's classes, and they're really interesting looking. You kind of are talking to basically like the top dog in swimming or the top dog in cycling, or, you know, as it comes to like running, like some of the best runners, not even just I think for the running event, it was the Sarah and Ben True. So Ben True is more of a runner. I think he's actually maybe 2 years younger than me. And so I probably raced him. Yeah,
he's old.
Well, he was fantastic in college. I think he ran for Dartmouth or something like that, but he is a fantastic runner. Just a really cool couple. So you're getting some of the best in each individual sports. And you're kind of, I guess, chatting with these people about all kinds of different things or sports specific stuff, or can you tell us a little bit about those master's classes?
Yeah. Like, this is something that we're really pumped up about. And we came up with the idea mid-summer, I'd say, 2018, about trying to get, the best swimmer in the sport, the best cyclist in the sport, the best runner in the sport, to share their thoughts on how to do that sport well. So over the end of 2018, coming into 2019, we ended up lining up Lucy Charles to teach a course on swimming with her husband, Reese Barkley, who is also a pro triathlete and a former swimmer. Cam Wurf taught a course on how to bike like Cam Wurf. And that was really, really interesting, because you've got a guy that's at the pinnacle of the sport, and he says that he chooses his tire pressure by flicking it with his finger.
Funny.
And listening to the ping. Sarah True, 2-time Olympian, 3-time podium finisher in ITU World Rankings. Her husband, Ben True, the 5K American road record holder, teaching a course on running. And then we had Aaron Carson, the strength trainer, to Mirinda Carfrae and Tim O'Donnell, teaching a strength training course. So it sort of came together as this insane month of travel that I didn't really plan this way, but all throughout January this month, we went from Spain to LA to Boulder, or to Tucson, then to Boulder, and produced all these courses. And we've got a website now. It's like protriathlontraining.com. And just literally this week, we're starting to launch it and tell the world about it. And it was interesting. My wife was involved in producing all the media. And there was one day about 2 weekends ago that she finished it. And like, she had a little tear in her eye. And she went, it's way better than we imagined. It's just so cool to hear these people at the pinnacle of the sport talk about their craft. Like, when do we get to do that in endurance sports?
Yeah.
When do we get to do that in anything? So
Taryn, since this is a cycling podcast, we'll nerd out about, because I love Cam Wurf. I think that guy is so cool. Is it so in that conversation?
He's a total jerk.
He's you would know. I've never met the guy. So.
What pro team did he come from? Do you guys? Because
Cannondale, wasn't he?
Was he on Cannondale's team?
Am I correct there, Taryn? Yeah. Okay. And he was. So I've watched some other videos on him. Is it still true that he does like 95% of his training on his road bike still?
Yeah. Probably a little bit less than that, but one ride every week or every 2 weeks in a time trial position.
Okay. So he's basically still, I mean, that's what your typical pro cyclist would still be training like, would, once every week or two jumping on the TT bike just to make sure you can still get in that position. But I know he was pretty adamant about talking about the quality of riding on the road bike for most of his training.
Yeah, and the thought behind that, it makes perfect sense that when you get into a time trial position, your body starts deteriorating. Like, it's an uncomfortable position. It's hard to put out good power. So if you're constantly in this position that is compromised, how do you really build fitness? You don't really build a ton of fitness. You might build comfort in that position, but how you build lots of fitness is by hours and hours on the bike. And if you're in the time trial position, you don't want to spend hours on the bike. And you also can't put out super high watts. So his really long endurance rides, his general rides for just basic fitness, his recovery rides, all road bike, his really hard efforts, road bike. And then there's one ride a week that is his race simulation ride where he's putting out his race effort. And that's when he pulls out the time trial bike. And I tried it leading into Puerto Rico, where I did just really one ride a week in the time trial position. And I did not feel compromised whatsoever. And I actually, I felt fresher. I didn't start feeling those hip impingements and my hips starting to get creaky and cracky when I was off the bike. And it's something that I'm going to try this build up to challenge Roth, because there's so many reasons that it makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you think about it. The best time trialists in triathlon, they all come from cycling. They're all guys who came from cycling, which was a significant amount of time in the road bike position. And that's, I think that's, you go on a road bike ride with roadies and you're going to hurt if you're not a triathlete who spends a lot of time on a road bike. And the reason you're going to hurt isn't because, it's a new position. It's because you usually don't put out that much power otherwise. And now all of a sudden you're hanging with the group we have around here. And Taryn, I'm sure you have a group around there. Our dialed team, we got guys on that team taking pulls at over 400 watts over and over and over again. And you've got to hang on to a wheel. So that's just not the type of training that triathletes usually do together. So
well, you also learn how to ride too. I'll pick on triathletes a little bit. We don't know how to ride in a pack. We don't know how to ride in wind. We don't know how to ride
downhill,
in downhill, uphill. We don't know how to work a road to our advantage. You go and ride with road riders a lot, and that's what I do most of my training with. The women in our group, when I started riding with the group, were dropping me like a bad habit. It was crazy how well they knew how to work a bike. And you don't get that just spending all of your time on Zwift or riding by yourself in the same position and on the same roads with the same conditions every single ride.
Yep.
Gotcha. Let's jump into the other question that we had here real quick. How do we get more people into the sport of triathlon and or cycling? I think one thing that you can do is to do something like what Taryn's doing right now. The guy has been putting out quality content to a lot of folks, and it's giving a lot of people that courage of being able to say, all right, you know what, I can do this. I can learn and I can watch and I can emulate and do what I'm doing. I have a question for you based on that, Taryn. What prompted that? How did you get to the point where you're like, all right, this is something I want to do. I'm going to start creating content. I'm going to start putting it out there, and I'm going to start teaching and inspiring people to get into the sport of triathlon.
Well, I've talked about this many, many times, and people can skip forward if they've heard it a bunch of times, because I say it a lot in podcasts. But if you're new, I think it'll be a story that a lot of people resonate with. I was a finance guy. I had a small little investment practice selling stocks and bonds and mutual funds and life insurance. And sure, I liked the people and it was a decent job. It was my own little business, but it never really felt like something that was at all meaningful to me. And I didn't really have anything that I was creating. I was essentially moving numbers from one side of the computer screen to the other. And I just wanted something that had nothing to do with work, that allowed me to be creative in some aspect. And one of the ways that I did some marketing as an investment advisor was I made videos, but legally I could make maybe 3 or 4 that would get approved every single year. So I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? I am going to have a project that the compliance department can't say a thing about. And I made it on a hobby. So I got to have that creative outlet of making some videos and learning how to make videos a little bit better. And what I was happiest doing every single week was that group road ride. So I thought, all right, well, I like doing triathlon. I'll start doing content on triathlon. And that's how it all started.
That is super cool. I've been doing a few videos as well on YouTube. and I put out about a video a week for this past year, and it is so hard. You do a video every day. It is you're absolutely killing it as far as like just the amount of content that you're producing. I'm super impressed with it, and I think it's really helpful for a lot of triathletes to have access to that much information.
I've got good help. I've got interestingly, if you might have heard somebody opening and closing the door, that was my video editor Mel giving me a fresh set of batteries for the podcasting setup here because they died.
Nice.
She helps out a lot, and she makes pretty much all the videos. My wife does a lot of the podcasts. And one of the things that I didn't really realize is when you're doing a video every day, you get pretty damn efficient at it.
Yeah.
When it was only say 2 a week, we were like, well, we don't really have a system for it. What are we doing?
Yeah.
But start doing one every day, it's like clockwork. You just start working through all the bugs of how do we make this more efficient? What's a better mic so that we don't have to correct the mic levels? What are the best camera settings that we can quickly adjust from slow motion to regular motion? What's the best gear? Like, we just start plucking out all the little efficiencies that we can. And in a pinch now, like, we could do, I want to say, we used to, when I first started, it would take me about 6 to 8 hours to do every single video, even the easy ones. I did the Puerto Rico video in, I think, 2 hours, and that probably would have taken me 4 days 3 years ago.
I saw that you had to edit that one yourself, just because internet connections were rough. But the video turned out great. You guys had tons of.
I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, you had actually a lot of good camera angles, and I mean, I don't know how you got all that footage, but it turned out really well.
That was all my wife. Every last frame, it was my wife. So what we do with those?
Was she on a motorcycle? There was some pretty crazy shots.
Yeah, she was on a motorcycle. So what we do with all those
literally
races,
she was on a motorcycle. Yes.
we pick spots, and like we pre-plan the shoot so that we can figure out, all right, how do we get the most different angles so it looks like we've got 20 people there, even though it's just one camera and maybe a GoPro.
Yeah.
And we did that the day before, and she got on the moto and found me on the moto. It was super cool to be like, just when I think it was like 40K into the bike when things just start hurting, and I heard the moto coming. I'm like, oh, I hope that's her.
That's cool.
And that was super neat.
Well, congratulations on a really amazing video. That turned out fantastic.
Yeah.
I know you have a lot of
good race and good video.
Yeah, absolutely.
That must have felt good to at least get both right, because if you do like had a great video, race wasn't great, you kind of come out feeling 50-50.
Good stuff.
No, the race is always more important. The video is just like kind of a fun bonus to look back on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good. Real quick, have you seen Matt's channel before? Have you ever checked out any of his videos? Matt Legrand?
I have to admit, I haven't.
Besides, well, so I have like over 60 subscribers.
Cool. Oh, come on! You've got like over 300 now. You're coming around, so sure.
But I do want to congratulate Taryn, because he just crossed over 60,000 subscribers. Congratulations, Taryn! That's really cool. It's really neat that many people are, following, and that you're inspiring that many triathletes to get into the sport or continue in the sport.
From one YouTube expert to another.
Well, thanks. But like, I find it like it's funny, it's surreal that I remember when I had 60 subscribers, and like it probably took me, I want to say it was like 100 videos before I even crossed 100 subscribers. And a friend was telling me when I was doing like video number 60, she was like, oh, you could become YouTube famous. And here I was, nobody was watching my videos. And I'm like, that's never going to happen. Crystal, don't be an idiot.
I love the lower numbers, because you actually I feel like the people you're talking to, and I felt like the first 100 were really hard to get, and it's just like, this is cool. It's like this part of the struggle or whatever it is. And then, the numbers pick up or whatever, but you can kind of connect with people, pretty easily.
I think I was one of the top 50. Does that mean I get like a T-shirt if you get over 100,000 at some point?
Like stickers for you.
Do I get a free mug? Okay.
Well, I can say this. I am, again, not the triathlon guy here, but when I do watch Matt's videos, he does inspire me to want to dabble in that.
Does it?
A little bit. I have to be honest.
Oh, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's a black hole.
Yeah, just bike.
I've got too many broken parts and pieces on me, though, to even consider doing that. But you should check it out one day, because Matt puts out some really quality stuff. And I'm not saying that just because he's sitting here to my left. And
He has
he's
to.
I
have to pay you.
Exactly.
The money's coming under the table
I
right
think
now.
you would be honestly surprised at how good of a video he's putting out. It's just a matter of time before Matt really starts to take off and blossom on the old YouTubes. So cool. Let's jump into one last thing, guys. Unless you have anything else you want to run through, Taryn, is there any other little things that you'd like to kind of throw out there? Any little plugs before we jump into one last thing?
No, I turned that into a 5-minute plug about the Pro Triathlon Training Masterclass. So
no, I love that. Yeah,
we should.
Did you see how I did that there? That was a little plug there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The website again for that is.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, the website again for that is protriathlontraining.com. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down.
And we'll put that.
And I will. Okay, I am gonna shamelessly plug this. We've got right now up until the end of April, 20% off anything.
Ooh, cool.
If people use the code PTT Launch 20. So like Pro Triathlon Training Launch 20.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll definitely leave
like
a
it.
link to the website in our show notes, as well as we do a fair amount of stuff through Facebook and things like that we'll try to make sure that we have the links on for that.
Yeah, we've got a budding triathlon team and triathlon community here on the whole that's doing really well. So I'm sure that there's going to be quite a few people who listen to this that are going to be excited to hear that. Yeah, good. All right, one last thing, Evan.
I'll probably use this one to talk about my first race of the year is fast approaching, like way too fast now that I look at the date. I'll be racing in Galveston 73, April 7th, I think is that race. And then the second week in May, I will be doing Chattanooga 73. So that's my one last thing.
Man.
How nervous are you right now?
So dang nervous. I originally was not that nervous, where I was like, it's just going to happen when it happens. Now that's closer, I'm like, oh my God.
You're going to do great. Your training's been going really well. So
your hours are ridiculous. You'll be just fine, my friend.
Yeah, the people I'm racing are ridiculous is the problem.
Matt, one last thing.
The one important thing that I would like to just throw out there is congratulations to my wife for she ran really hard, and she went out hard and she put it on the line, and she was hurting really bad the last couple of miles, and she's sore today, and I'm just proud of her.
Yeah.
So
yeah, good. Taryn, one last thing.
Try triathlon.
Yep.
Or I mean, if you want equally as time consuming and just as expensive, take up drugs. Like similar sorts of time commitments.
That's basically on the surface the same idea.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Jake, one last thing. What do you have for us?
I just wanted to thank Taryn for being on the show. I
Absolutely.
mean, I'm not the triathlon guy here, but I did take some time to go and watch some of your videos. Very well done. And Matt and I have been dabbling in this, and Matt's already well into the whole process of creating his own content, putting it out there, and having that creative outlet has been great, and it's something that I've been dabbling with, and I'm building up content, but I have to make the time. I got to make this happen because it's something that I want to be doing as well. And if it's for nobody else but other than myself, maybe a few friends, and it's good for the team or something like that, that's fine too. I don't need to be giant and whatnot, but it's been an inspiration to be around Matt and watch this, and to watch Taryn's videos, and I'm gonna just say that I'm inspired to kind of kick it into the next gear and hopefully start putting out some more
I'm
content
excited
as
for
well.
you too. I can't wait for you to start posting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I meant to get after this last summer, but getting hit by a car and put in the hospital for some time and having all kinds of broken bones
your
and
shoulder had other
surgeries.
plans, and your ankle.
So we're coming out of that funk and that fog, and I want to be able to do that stuff as well. So I think that's it, guys. Taryn, thank you.
Taryn, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Taryn. We will be tuning in. I'm excited to see your content here coming up.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is a lot of fun.
Yep, and again, you can check out Taryn at his website, the Triathlon Taryn, that's TAREN.com, for more information, and then his new website that's coming out very soon, protriathlontraining.com as well. Matt, where else can you see him? YouTube?
Yeah, definitely. You can follow him on the daily on YouTube, which is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Taryn, thanks so much.
So, and if you guys have any questions for us, or if you would like to connect with us, you can check us out at Dialed Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, and email any of us our first names at dialedpodcast.com. On that note, thank you for listening, and we will catch you guys next time. Bye for now.
Good.